A quote by Sri Amma Bhagavan, founder of Oneness University in India, writes, "There are no prerequisites to experience grace other than a personal relationship with the divine." New Thought author Joel Goldsmith, in his book The New Healing, writes, "Spiritual healing is the result of the direct contact of an individual with the center of his consciousness. When we touch this place within our own being, healing naturally follows. If someone has asked for help, that one receives the healing. No words, treatment, arguments, affirmations, or denials are necessary in spiritual healing. The only requirement is that we become still, that we silence the outer senses and go deep within our being until we feel ourselves at the center of consciousness. Then a contact is made, a feeling within us becomes evident, and we know that the healing has been accomplished." Join me in using the creative power of the spoken word combined with the conviction of the heart as we speak this affirmation into being. Today, I create a new reality. I listen within for the newly emerging vision, pulled by a vision of possibilities. I choose words, thoughts, and actions that speak the truth of my vision for my life and for the planet. Thank you.
So Ernest Holmes said the spiral of evolution is ever upward. And what he's speaking about there is that there is an inner urge within each one of us to grow, to expand, to unfold, to become more of who we are in truth, that divine essence of our being. And that inner upward movement and expansion of consciousness is something that is inherent in us. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. But here's the thing, is that, okay, let me kind of backtrack a little bit. What I have learned over the years, and I've been using the visioning process, which is one of our pillars of spiritual practice. I've been using it since somewhere in the 90s. And for many years, I thought it was about creating stuff, and actually that's a byproduct. But then one day it dawned on me after I'd been visioning for a while, it's really about my own evolution of consciousness. That's the key. That's what it really is all about. Because in the process of us having a higher vision for our lives, it's always about becoming more of that divine presence that we are to be a vibrational match to the next unfolding vision. And here's the other thing that I realized. It is an unfolding process because the vision that I catch at one point in time of who I am, once it is attained, guess what? More. Another version of myself. And this is true for all of us. Another version of myself starts coming into view. And that is the vision that's pulling me. So the idea of being pulled by the vision is so powerful because this is the alternative. The alternative is to be pushed by pain. Anybody for that? And many of us have been in that place, and maybe you're in that place right now where pain has been pushing us to evolve in consciousness. And in truth, crisis is an evolutionary driver. It can be done that way, and actually it's a very powerful force to drive us to the next level or the next version of who we are. However, the alternative is this process of visioning that we talk about, is to catch the higher vision, the next version of who we are, and to allow ourselves to be pulled by that. And that pulling of that new vision has a tendency to help us to adjust our thinking, to take the time to do spiritual practice and turn within. So, this entire month, we're going to be deepening into this thing called being pulled by a vision of infinite possibilities. And today, the focus is going to be on direct contact with the divine as a beginning step for that vision. Because unless we give ourselves the opportunity to make that connection with with our true selves, with the source of all that is, then we tend to continue to flounder, even if we think we have a bigger vision for ourselves, because it is in that deep, going deep within ourselves, that transformation takes place, that possibilities unfold that maybe are not in our conscious mind. And so it's envisioning takes us deep and poses questions that really support us in the process of unfolding. So, New Thought visionary Barbara Marx Hubbard is someone who really acquainted me with this whole thing of the spiral of conscious evolution in a really deep way. I took her Gateway program back in the early 2000s, and her statement is that crisis is an evolutionary driver. We just talked about that. Pain can push us. That's actually kind of built in. And Bruce Lipton, anybody aware of Bruce Lipton? Yeah, he's right, a biologist who has studied the biology of belief. And he says that crisis ignites evolution, so it's the same idea. However, again, we can be pulled by the vision of infinite possibilities instead. And that's what I elect. I don't know about you. That's what I choose. And in truth, with all the crises that are going on the planet in one form or another, whether they're personal or whether they're global, these crises are really setting us up for what Bruce Lipton called that humans are now poised on the brink of an evolutionary upheaval. Humans are poised on the brink of an evolutionary upheaval because of the crises. So that's the positive side. We talk about looking for the good in everything. That's the positive side to crises that are happening on the planet. It calls us into a higher level of consciousness to resolve the situation. And so all kinds of new inventions and new ways of doing things and ways of being are being called forth from each one of us and people all over the planet. And for this, I give my thanks. So let's just go back to what Sri Amma said, and Marianne just read it, is that as the way that we participate in our own evolutionary process, we call this visioning and meditation. The how is to develop a personal relationship with the divine. And we do this through direct contact with the infinite. Direct contact with the infinite. That's what we do when we do our spiritual practice, when we dive deep within. And so it's just a reminder of that beautiful quote, that spiritual healing, when Joel Goldsmith talks about spiritual healing, he's talking about the evolutionary process. He's talking about clearing away the false belief in duality and allowing that awareness of oneness to rise to the surface. He is talking about the evolution of consciousness when he says spiritual healing. So keep that in mind as I read this. Spiritual healing is the result of direct contact of an individual with the center of his consciousness. When we touch this place within our own being, the healing of ourself and others takes place. Why? Because we're one. Yes? The only requirement is that we become still, that we silence our outer selves and go deep within our being until we feel ourselves at the center of consciousness. Then a contact is made, a feeling within us becomes evident, and we know that the healing has been accomplished. So, one of the things that we learn in our practitioner training is that after we complete a prayer, an affirmative prayer we call spiritual mind treatment, after we complete that, we sit in the silence until we feel that click, that it truly is done. There's a feeling of that. And sometimes it happens in the middle of the prayer, but sometimes just sitting in the silence for a few moments afterwards is the click shows up. That inner click is what I call it. So, one of the best ways of describing or helping us ground into this idea of direct contact is a story. And there's a beautiful story in the book of John, chapter 4, verses 4 through 14. And it's a story where Jesus and the disciples have been journeying, and they're weary and they're tired. And I think while the disciples are obviously maybe going to the market or something like that, Jesus finds his way to a well and he's thirsty. And this particular well is called Jacob's Well. And there's a stranger there, and this is an area where the Samaritans live, where they are. And so a Samaritan woman walks up to the well, and Jesus asks her for a drink. And she says, "How is it that you, who are a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" Because that was unusual on that day. Usually the Jews had nothing to do with the Samaritans. And so this is what Jesus said. Now remember, these stories have all levels of meaning to them. So I'd like you to keep your ears open and your heart open and your awareness open to the deeper levels, because there's a surface level story, but there's a deeper message here on conscious evolution and on this thing called making direct contact with the divine. So he said, if you knew what God's free gift is, guess what God's free gift is? Think about it. And if you knew who it is that says to you, "Give me a drink," you would ask him to give you living water, and he would give it to you. Living water. I love this culture, this Aramaic culture from a long time ago, who uses metaphor to teach something. Living water, the living waters within us. There was something in the words and the looks of Jesus that made the woman feel that he was not a common man. She said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where can you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who drank from this well and who gave it to us?" So she's, the mortal mind is questioning, and that's what our mortal minds do, don't they? Like that's because the mortal mind is attached to the senses, the five senses. If I can't see it, if you can't prove it to me with my five senses, then I'm not going to believe it. That's the mortal mind. But we're asked to cultivate another aspect of ourselves, which is our true selves, which is part of the infinite invisible, not available to our five senses. It's available to what some people call the sixth sense, or to the spiritual essence of who we are. So, the story goes on and says, "Whoever drinks of this well water," Jesus said, "shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the living water shall never thirst. The water that I shall give is something that is within the person, a well of water springing up from everlasting life." And she said, "Sir, give me some of that water of yours so that I will not thirst anymore." So, the metaphor, these are metaphors. And remember, if we look at the way the Bible unfolds, these beautiful sacred teachings have these deep meanings if we look for them and if we realize that they were not intended to be literal. That culture did not write to record history necessarily. That their interest, the interest of these great mystics who wrote these sacred texts, was to impart higher truth, how to evolve in consciousness from the idea of duality to the idea of oneness, the truth of oneness. And when you think of Adam and Eve represented, they call it the fall, but it represented the 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 shift of focus. I'm going to put it that way, from oneness to duality. And then there's the whole process of evolution through all of the different Bible stories with the culmination of the Christ consciousness embodied by Jesus, which is really, again, representative of our own journey from duality and separation, believing in that, into an awakening to the already present oneness of life and our unity with the divine. And even saying unity with the divine, it almost makes it sound like separation. So using language to describe this can be challenging at times, because when you're talking about oneness and the great teachers of all time, the great mystics, said that God's presence, this presence that we call God, is centered everywhere and its circumference is nowhere. And therefore, right here where I am, where all of us are, is the fullness of that presence, is the all that is, all love, all peace, all joy, all good, all beauty available to us. And it's right within our very own being as our true selves. So, Joel Goldsmith, I think, puts this so beautifully. He said, "The search for a power outside ourselves ceases as we realize our oneness with God. We rely more and more on the divinity of our own being, the kingdom of God within us for all of our needs. And as we stop looking outside ourselves to person, circumstance, or condition for our good, as we stop looking outside of ourselves for anything, the infinite good of the divine unfolds from within our own being. No longer do we find it necessary to rely on any outside source for health or wealth, nor even look to divine love somewhere outside of ourselves to meet human needs. Divine love is the very soul of our being. We are love." Just let's ground it in. Let's just say, I am love.
I am love.
Right. So again, the Samaritan woman in the story represents the mortal mind. And we've talked about that a little bit. Reliance on five senses, a belief in duality, a tendency to look outside the self for our good. And Jesus, on the other hand, represents Christ consciousness, which is oneness consciousness. That's what it really is. The consciousness of love, appealing to the mortal mind. So again, within us, if we again turn the story about our own journey, within us, that inner call of the Christ consciousness within us appeals to the mortal mind to go within to receive the gift of the divine, the gift of God. In Jesus' teachings, he says over and over again, and it's interesting that there are people who don't hear this, but over and over again, he says, the kingdom of heaven is where? Within. The kingdom of God is within, in so many different ways. And then all of his stories describe this kingdom of God within, all of his little parables, just as this story does. So, again, what is that for us practically? What is the practical application of this for us? Meditation and visioning, which is a form of meditation, where we pose the question, what is the divine highest idea for my life? And we go within and we listen deeply to what unfolds, and we keep a record of it. And we don't do it just once, we do it as a regular practice, because as we begin to see the patterns of our journaling unfolding, we begin to catch that next new version of ourselves that is pulling us into being. And the thing is as we do this, we begin to walk in grace or live in the flow of grace. And grace, from the New Thought perspective, means simply the love of the divine freely given. We don't have to do backflips. We don't have to run around the block 50 million times. We don't have to we simply have to be willing to accept it. And we accept that gift when we go within, when we do our spiritual practice, when we do our affirmative prayer, when we vision. Living in grace. So I have a beautiful prayer for you by Jack Addington that Dan's going to put up on the screen, that I'm going to invite us all to say together. We ready? We'll start with God is the only power on the second line. Okay, God is the only power in my life. Nothing from without can touch the perfect life of God within me. I am a perfect child of God, and nothing that anyone has ever done or said can interfere with my divine inheritance. The power of God is greater than any circumstance in my life. The strength of God is mine to use. Turning away from all feelings of inadequacy, I discover that all I need is within me right now. As I forgive the past, I find that I have nothing to atone for and nothing to run away from. Casting off the old me, I discover my true self. I take dominion in my life. Old habits have no power over me. Conditions have no power over me. Personalities have no power over me. I take dominion. I am whole. I am free. I am complete now and forever. And so it is. Woo! The light is on bright in this room. So here's the call to action. It is to remember this really clear truth that Sri Amma Bhagavan said, that there are no prerequisites to experience grace other than a personal relationship with the divine. So I'm going to invite us to close our eyes and deepen into this beautiful prayer written by Louise Hay. And it's in the first person. So I'd like you to take this as your own. And if you want to, in your own mind, just repeat this beautiful prayer in your own mind. It's all about this concept of the well. So let's take a breath. Let's come fully into the present moment, letting go of anything that came before, or any concern about what comes after, and allow ourselves to be fed spiritually by these beautiful words of truth. Deep at the center of my being, there is an infinite well of love. I now allow this love to flow to the surface. It fills my heart, my body, my mind, my consciousness, my very being, and radiates out from me in all directions and returns to me multiplied. The more love I use and give, the more I have to give. The supply of love is endless. The use of love makes me feel good. It is an expression of my inner joy. I love myself. Therefore, I take loving care of my body. I lovingly feed it nourishing foods and beverages. I lovingly groom it and dress it. And my body lovingly responds to me with vibrant health and energy. I love myself, and therefore I provide for myself a comfortable home, one that fills all my needs and is a pleasure to be in. I fill the rooms with the vibration of love, so that all who enter, myself included, feel this love and are nourished by it. I love myself. Therefore, I work at a job I truly enjoy doing, one that uses my creative talents and abilities, working with and for people that I love and who love me, and earning a good income. I love myself. Therefore, I behave and think in a loving way to all people. For I know that that which I give out returns to me multiplied. I attract only loving people in my world, for they are a mirror of what I am. I love myself. Therefore, I forgive and totally release the past and all past experiences, and I am free. I love myself. Therefore, I totally live in the now, experiencing each moment as good, and knowing that my future is bright and joyous and secure. For I am a beloved child of the universe. I am a beloved child of the universe. And the universe lovingly takes care of me, now and forevermore. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.